So I know that this isn't everybody's favorite topic, and we'll kind of hit on it quick, but it's extremely important, I think. So the FOMC took place today. The Fed met today for their, I think it'd be about their third meeting already this year. They stood pat as far as interest rates go, which is what many people thought would happen. We definitely weren't thinking a cut was going to happen at this point. But we're at the point now, and I didn't totally read everything that Jerome Powell said after the announcement that they were not pivoting or anything like that. But the sentiment has just, we already going into that, people were not expecting rate cuts and a pivot until September of this year. Prior to that, Ewok, I mean, you remember we were talking on the show for the longest time that we were thinking this meeting here right now, or maybe the one in June or towards the end of summer, would be when we would see a pivot. We're now to the point with some of the comments from Jerome Powell, the fact that the CPI data came in a little bit hotter than expected a few weeks ago. So the Fed is talking hawkish and all these things. Now there's only an expectation of one rate cut in all of 2024. So we would be looking at, assuming there's a meeting in December, which I believe there usually is, that not happening until then. So that's 6 months of expectations from you, I, and the market, really, that thought that we would be seeing a pivot by middle of 2024, that maybe we won't even see one in 2024. Which I think makes things really interesting and tends to line up kind of with what we try to illustrate at the top of the show about the Bitcoin price, crypto prices overall. Now that we're seeing Bitcoin pull back, everybody was geared up for this, like, oh, left translated cycle, things are getting bullish early. I think this macro stuff can only help lend to, we will see a smoother, longer cycle, right, especially if we're not going to see a pivot yet, because, we talk about it like a pivot is usually an initial bearish event. Even though it's bullish maybe overall, it is bearish for 30 to 60 days after the actual pivot takes place.
Right.
So, yeah, what do you make of that? The fact that we could only get one rate cut this year, if any, and how that may line up as far as macro and the crypto market over the next really 2 years, because I think that's how long it's going to really matter. So,
well, I still feel the same way about it. I think I agree with you. I think it will help elongate the cycle a little bit. But I want to throw this back at you, and I don't know if you saw this or not.
No.
But the U.S. Treasury also today announced the first buyback operation since 2002. So essentially, they're launching a buyback program of all the liquidity in the Treasury market. So I don't know a whole lot about what this will do to the banking supply. Like, I'm not a financial dude like that at all, but a lot of these people are calling this very similar to a bank buyback because, or a bank bailout, because they're buying up all this stuff that they are afraid people are going to dump. I guess it's, well, I'll just read it to you here.
Yeah.
It says, during this period, the Treasury plans to hold weekly liquidity support buybacks of up to $2 billion per operation, with up to $500 million allocated for TIPS, which are Treasury inflation-protected securities. This initiative aims to ensure the Treasury market remains the deepest and most liquid in the world, addressing concerns about market functioning and resilience. So it shows the schedule of what they're buying back, all these different securities and things like that. So does this mean anything to you? Someone had equated it to a quantitative tightening, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like it could go along those lines, and like him referring to it as a bank bailout. Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I could see that being a continuation of what the Fed is already talking about here. So
they're afraid to raise rates, so they're doing this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it could coincide. And definitely have something to do with it. I don't think that they're planning on doing anything for quite some time. And like, even though, we talk a lot about like Jerome Powell sometimes will purposely, I think, try to sound a little bit more hawkish than he really means to be. I mean, now we're at the point where people have been expecting rate cuts and a pivot for quite some time. So for him to still sound this hawkish now, I think is like they are serious about not doing anything for a little while here.
Yeah.
And they, anticipated for inflation to be down further than when it was. I forget what the exact number was a couple of weeks ago when it came out, but it was just a bit higher than they expected. So whether that
Well,
number's even real, but
yeah, who knows? And I love how they all say, well, the jobs are up, man. Jobs are up. Well, jobs are up because people can't afford shit, so they've had to get a second job.
mhm,
That's why the jobs are up.
right.
It's not because the market's so hot and things are going great. It's because people can't afford stuff with one income. They've had to get a second job. So, that's a big part of that as well.
Yeah. And I was going to throw this in. I mean, this is more of I don't know if I want to call it a fluff piece because I don't know how much it surprises any of us, but I was going to mention this a couple of weeks ago if we were going to get into the Fed and Jerome Powell, but James O'Keefe, formerly of Project Veritas, but now does his own thing with I forget, it's OMG O'Keefe Media Group or something like that.
He's that
Um,
undercover guy.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it's always like, well, I'm not even going to get into that, but it's always a date setting for some reason between
Yeah.
two. It's just funny how it works out. It's like
Yeah.
James O'Keefe in a blonde wig fools somebody or whatever.
Right.
But they did a whole thing with Jerome Powell, and I was excited to see it. Like, I don't know what it was going to be, but long and short of it was, and usually his stuff is great, but this one was more kind of just like, oh, a Fed staffer admits what we already know, that Jerome Powell wants to cement his own legacy and cares about himself and his own politics and protecting Joe Biden, hates Trump, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, no shit. I mean, I don't think there were any of us that doubted any of that. I mean, that's kind of
Right.
just a modus operandi of like all these politicians. Really, he's out to save
Sure.
himself. And but that said, even though it's like, yeah, no shit, really, it's also like this is an unelected group of people who are in charge of the monetary policy of our country. you know and it's one thing like if the president is somebody that you don't like. I mean, they have Congress to go through and stuff like that, but these guys control the money. Nobody voted for them at all, and we have no idea what their motives are or anything. So while I already kind of suspected the stuff that O'Keefe said in that piece, I think it was still cool that they did that anyway.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, but I mean,
No,
it's
not really. I didn't see
full
any of
respect.
it, so
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, these guys are all looking to cement their own legacy. It's kind of you know status quo for all of them, and being on one side or the other, they're gonna try to protect the guy that put them in there, and obviously say that they hate the other guy that hopefully comes in.
Yeah, and Hex Girl, yeah, money is the primary cause of it. Printing money is the primary cause of inflation, but it's essentially they can't stop doing it. They just can't
Right.
stop doing it. Like basically, the country is so effed, for lack of a better term, at this point financially, that they get to a point where there is no other option, and
Right.
they're always going to do it, and that's why everybody loves that is in crypto. Loves being in crypto if they really understand how money in this country works right now,
Yeah.
because they're never going to stop printing. Like they
Yeah.
can say all these things like we're really serious about the debt, we're going to tighten things and things like that. At the end of the day, they're going to print money. They're going to bail people out. They're going to print money because they don't know what else to do. And that's
They
why
find other ways to do it because it's so mismanaged. I think
mhm,
that's the best way to put it. The economy is so mismanaged, that they try to give too much money to too many people that doesn't exist, and you debase the value. I mean, look at the spending power over the last 50 years. That's what it's more about. It's not that the prices of things have gone up. It's that the value of the dollar has gone down because there is so much of it injected in, because they've got to pay so many people off to do so many different things, that the money supply is just so overwhelmingly, it's not hard to get. That's
right.
why you see the price of gold going up and all these cryptos going up. Um, Not to mention the value of the dollar going down. It's a pendulum that helps each other swing, but yeah, it's the debasing of the actual value of the dollar is really what the main cause.
They've kicked the can so far down the road at this point. There's just no going back. Like
Yeah,
there's just
it's too late.
absolutely no going back. It's kind of like just take it to the individual level. Like if there's somebody who's been living a life where it's like they have an expensive car that they actually can't afford, and they have like a $500 a month car payment, and like a house they can't really afford, and then they lose their job or whatever. It's like they refuse to downgrade anything. Like that's the general American. Like I don't think many of us are like that because we're kind of more right-minded about money and stuff like that. But most people are not living below their means. Most people are grossly in debt, think that just because the car is outside in their parking spot that they own it, even though they don't own the house that they live in. I mean, mortgages are fine, I mean, as long as it's a low interest rate. But I mean, I think people are like, this is the custom of life that I have, this is what I'm going to maintain, and there's no way I'm going to go below that. And it's like, all right, well, you're screwed, dude. I mean, you will have no life if you keep trying to maintain this. So yeah, that's kind of where the money printing policy is at, and that's why I'd rather be in crypto than holding fiat currency at this point. So yeah.